Hollywood has always been a land of dreams, where stardom gleams tantalizingly close, promising fortune, fame, and immortality. For countless dreamers, it is a beacon of endless possibilities, a place where humble beginnings can transform into legendary careers. But beneath the glitz and glamour lies a darker truth, a seedy underbelly as old as the industry itself. Affairs, drug addictions, and moral compromises have shaped the lives of its stars, even as powerful studios meticulously crafted facades of perfection to protect their investments and keep the chaos hidden. Barbara Payton was once one of those stars, coveted and protected by the same machine that would later discard her. A small-town girl from Cloquet, Minnesota, she rose quickly, captivating Hollywood with her beauty and presence. Signed to a major studio, she earned $10,000 a week and lived a life many could only dream of. But Barbara's story is not one of lasting triumph. It is a tragedy. Her impulsive choices, insatiable need for validation, and disastrous decisions led her down a path of scandal and ruin. Even as the industry turned its back on her, much of her demise was driven by her inability to escape the cycles of her own making. In less than a decade, Barbara's meteoric rise turned into a tragic downfall. Once celebrated as a rising star, her name became synonymous with scandal and excess, making her a pariah among the Hollywood elite she once called peers. As film offers vanished, she was forced into a life of prostitution to survive. Her spiraling addiction to drugs and alcohol ravaged both her body and mind, culminating in a heartbreaking and lonely demise, worlds away from the glamorous life she had once known. This is the haunting story of Barbara Payton, a cautionary tale of Hollywood's false promises and the devastating cost of chasing its fleeting dreams. Though her light burned out long ago, its flicker still haunts us, an echo of all that she was and all that she might have been. Barbara Payton's childhood was a tapestry of contradictions, shaped by ambition and familial turmoil. Born Barbara Lee Redfield on November 16, 1927 in Cloquet, Minnesota. Barbara's early years were marked by the contrasting dynamics of her parents. Her mother, Mabel, was a warm yet flawed figure, battling alcoholism and marital discord while offering Barbara consistent love and support. Her father, Lee, a hardworking and inventive man, remained emotionally distant, his stern demeanor fostering an enduring divide in their relationship. This duality of affection from Mabel and detachment from Lee left an indelible mark on Barbara's formative years, instilling both strength and a yearning for connection. The family's move to Odessa, Texas in 1939 was a pivotal chapter in Barbara's life. Lee's ambition to establish Antlers Court, a successful motel business, brought financial stability but deepened the family's emotional fractures. During this time, Barbara found a maternal alternative in her independent and vivacious aunt, Faye. Summers with Faye in Fort Worth provided Barbara with glimpses of indulgence and freedom, contrasting sharply with her father's reserved demeanor. Life in Odessa was a blend of prosperity and chaos. While the motel thrived, the Redfield household teetered between moments of eccentric humor and emotional neglect. Lee poured himself into work and hobbies, often retreating from his family, while Mabel's unpredictable behavior and reliance on alcohol created an unstable environment. Barbara's emerging beauty became a focal point in the family, with Mabel dressing her in glamorous outfits and encouraging the attention her daughter attracted. Yet this adoration carried a darker undertone, as Barbara was thrust into situations that left her vulnerable to objectification, particularly from older men. Lee's discomfort with his daughter's growing femininity exacerbated their estrangement, leaving Barbara with unresolved feelings of rejection that would echo throughout her life. Amid this tumult, Barbara's striking beauty became both a blessing and a burden. Her radiant complexion and crystal blue eyes captivated those around her, drawing admiration that Mabel encouraged, but Lee seemed to resist. Mabel's doting behavior appeared tied to her own unrealized dreams, projecting aspirations onto Barbara while failing to shield her from exploitation. As Barbara entered adolescence, the contradictions in her upbringing became increasingly pronounced. Her growing allure widened the emotional gap with her father, whose retreat from her life left a void she would seek to fill in often unhealthy ways. Speculation surrounds the reasons for their estrangement, but its effects on Barbara were unmistakable. At Odessa High School, Barbara Payton exuded a magnetic charm that made her a standout figure in her small-town community. With her striking dark blonde hair and radiant personality, she earned a reputation as a small-town goddess. Barbara's talents were multifaceted. She excelled academically in English and history, showcased athletic prowess in swimming, gymnastics, and cheerleading, and demonstrated artistic creativity through her work in ceramics, which garnered admiration from peers and family alike. Her achievements painted a picture of a promising young woman with intelligence, talent, and beauty. Yet, beneath this seemingly perfect exterior, Barbara cultivated a bold, tough-talking persona that hinted at deeper complexities. The tough exterior served as a defense mechanism, shielding her from vulnerabilities she sought to conceal. Her time in high school revealed the blend of brilliance, charm, and inner conflict that would later define her life, setting the stage for both her triumphs and her challenges. Barbara Payton's deep need for validation made her susceptible to experiences that profoundly shaped her emotional and psychological development. In her memoir, she briefly recounted a formative and troubling moment, losing her virginity at the age of 15 to a friend's 45-year-old father during his birthday party, in a dry bathtub. This incident, which was mentioned in passing, reflects a moment of exploitation that likely left a lasting imprint on her psyche. Such an early and unsettling encounter with adult dynamics may have influenced Barbara's future relationships and attitudes toward men. Some suggest her later promiscuity carried elements of subconscious retaliation, a way to reclaim control in situations where she had once been powerless. Others see it as a symptom of unhealed emotional wounds, driving her toward patterns of seeking approval and affection from men, even at great personal cost. At just 16, she eloped with her high school sweetheart, William Hodge, in November 1943. The marriage, annulled within a week at her parents' insistence, reflected Barbara's adventurous spirit and desire for independence. While some suggest her father, Lee, pushed for the annulment, her brother Frank dismissed the union as a fleeting whim that Barbara quickly outgrew. Dropping out of high school soon after, she embraced a reputation as a bold, unconventional young woman, eager to challenge societal expectations and explore her burgeoning sense of self. World War II heightened the romantic atmosphere of Barbara's adolescence, intertwining her life with the era's fervor. Her family's home became a social hub for soldiers from the nearby Midland Army Air Base, where Barbara's beauty and vivacity captivated many admirers. Among them was John Jack Payton, a 22-year-old decorated Air Force pilot who was instantly charmed by her confidence and allure. Barbara's boldness played a key role in their whirlwind romance. When Jack hesitated to commit, she left a wedding gown in his hotel room as a playful yet persuasive gesture. Their marriage on February 10, 1945, marked the start of a new chapter, offering Barbara a taste of the stability her parents had hoped for. Life with Jack initially provided structure and companionship. The couple lived on the Air Base barracks before relocating to Rock Island, Illinois, where Barbara quickly won over Jack's family with her charisma and charm. Despite the domestic harmony, Barbara's ambitions extended beyond traditional family roles. When they moved to Los Angeles in 1945, Jack enrolled at USC under the GI Bill while Barbara pursued modeling opportunities, eager to carve out a career of her own. Barbara's beauty and determination soon garnered success in the modeling world. Signing with Saba of California, she appeared in magazines like California Stylist and Junior Bazaar, earning recognition for her striking presence. In May 1946, news of her pregnancy marked a turning point. Embracing motherhood, Barbara welcomed her son, John Lee, on Valentine's Day in 1947, recording his milestones with devoted care. However, despite the surface stability of their post-war life in Compton, Barbara's restless drive for a more fulfilling life clashed with Jack's desire for a quieter, conventional existence. While Barbara delighted in decorating their home and nurturing her family, she soon returned to modeling, reigniting tensions between her aspirations and Jack's expectations. By mid-1948, their marriage dissolved, and Barbara left Compton with her young son, determined to pursue her dreams in Hollywood. Barbara's modeling career flourished, with work for Rita Leroy's agency and brands like Studebaker. Her natural charm and beauty also drew her into Hollywood's glamorous but precarious social scene. She became a vibrant presence on the Sunset Strip, working as a car hop at Stan's Drive-In while forging connections with influential figures, including Universal International production chief William Goetz. In January 1949, Goetz noticed her striking appearance and signed her to a studio contract, making her part of a rising class of talents like Rock Hudson and Shelley Winters. Under Universal's guidance, Barbara trained with acting coach Sophie Rosenstein and landed small roles in films like Once More, My Darling, 1949. Her boldness extended beyond the studio, where she balanced acting with single motherhood, often bringing her son to work. Financially strained, Barbara leveraged her magnetic personality to navigate Hollywood's nightlife, building relationships with influential figures like George Raft, Mickey Cohen, and Preston Sturgis. Her charm and fearless pursuit of fame made her unforgettable, even as friends worried about the risks she was taking. In March 1949, Barbara stepped away from Hollywood for a Universal publicity tour across Northeast Texas, forging a close friendship with casting assistant Bob Raines. During a stop in Dallas, she reunited with oil tycoon Bob Neal at the Baker Hotel, who introduced her to comedian Bob Hope. The 46-year-old married Hope was immediately captivated, and their affair began that night. Hope set Barbara up in a luxurious Hollywood apartment and invited her on his nationwide tour, but the relationship derailed her career. Barbara neglected her Universal commitments to travel with Hope, leading to her contract's termination on a morals charge. Despite the professional fallout, Barbara prioritized the affair, seemingly indifferent to its cost. The glamorous relationship quickly soured as Barbara began demanding financial support from Hope. Their affair devolved into public disputes, with Barbara criticizing his stinginess and even mocking his prowess as a lover in tabloid interviews. After a heated argument following Hope's hospitalization, their relationship ended. To silence her, Hope's advisors paid Barbara a substantial sum to disappear, which she quickly spent before moving on. Amid these personal upheavals, Barbara's devotion to family surfaced when she returned to Odessa after her mother, Mabel, was diagnosed with breast cancer. Barbara stayed for weeks, caring for Mabel after a grueling mastectomy, cooking, cleaning, and offering comfort. Despite ongoing tensions with her father, Lee, she remained composed, leaving only once her mother's health stabilized. Professionally, Barbara's career shifted when she transitioned to Eagle Lion Studios and secured the lead role in the crime drama Trapped, directed by Richard Fleischer. Casting director Owen McLean selected Barbara for her striking beauty and impressive audition, giving her a significant opportunity to prove her talent. Playing Meg Dixon, a nightclub worker entangled in a counterfeiting plot, Barbara showcased her beauty and raw talent. Her co-star Lloyd Bridges and Fleischer praised her professionalism and charm, and critics recognized her potential as a leading actress. The film's success elevated her status, bringing her attention from major studios and landing her the female lead in James Cagney's Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, 1950. With a $5,000 a week contract co-managed by Warner Brothers and Cagney Productions, Barbara's career soared, positioning her as a rising star. Barbara's performance in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, 1950, marked the pinnacle of her acting career, earning her widespread acclaim and establishing her as a rising star in Hollywood. Portraying Holiday Carleton, a woman drawn into the schemes of James Cagney's ruthless gangster, Barbara delivered a nuanced and compelling performance. Her chemistry with Cagney and ability to convey her character's emotional transformation elevated the gritty crime drama, making it a commercial success. Critics praised her raw talent, noting her unique blend of beauty and depth. This role solidified her place in the industry, showcasing her potential as a leading actress. Despite professional success, Barbara's ascent was shadowed by the trappings of Hollywood's glamour and excess. rumors of her involvement with influential figures, including producer William Cagney, swirled, casting a shadow over her achievements. Barbara's rising fame was accompanied by an embrace of Hollywood's vibrant social scene. Dubbed the new queen of the clubs, she lit up the Sunset Strip, mingling with stars like Frank Sinatra and Lana Turner. By day, she maintained professional discipline, balancing her glamorous nightlife with a burgeoning career. Her confidence seemed unshakable, and Warner Brothers rewarded her standout performance in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye with an unprecedented $10,000 a week pay raise. However, Barbara's next project, The Western Dallas, 1950, marked a shift. Cast in the minor role of Flo, her screen time and prominence were diminished. Speculation about tensions with Warner Brothers, struggles with weight management, or the studio's preference for contracted stars clouded her involvement. Director Stuart Heisler's avoidance of close-ups and editing choices fueled rumors of discord. Dallas ultimately failed to capitalize on Barbara's star power. Off-screen, Barbara's life attracted significant attention. Her alleged affair with co-star Steve Cochran, known for his indulgent lifestyle, and whispers of a connection with Gary Cooper deepened her mystique. Her association with Cochran, coupled with her use of amphetamine-based diet pills, sparked concerns about her behavior and appearance. By 1950, Barbara's chaotic lifestyle began to overshadow her professional accomplishments. At industry parties, her charm and vivaciousness were increasingly accompanied by visible intoxication and connections to controversial figures, such as the King brothers. Actor Steve Hayes noted her draw toward Hollywood's darker undercurrents, observing her reliance on alcohol and her need for constant validation. Amid this turbulence, Barbara's personal life took a dramatic turn when she met actor Francho Tone at Mocambo nightclub. Her uncontainable energy and untamed charisma contrasted sharply with Tone's refined demeanor, sparking a passionate and tumultuous relationship. Tone, an actor renowned for his sophistication and acclaimed roles in films like Mutiny on the Bounty, brought an air of refinement to their pairing. By the time they met, he was a seasoned Hollywood figure with scars from failed marriages and personal strife. Barbara, at the height of her fame in 1950, had been named the most beautiful girl in pictures, basking in adoration and the promise of a bright future. Tone was captivated by Barbara's beauty and vitality, lavishing her with gifts and offering jobs to her family members to demonstrate his commitment. Their engagement in October 1950, celebrated with grandeur at the Stork Club, marked a defining moment in Barbara's rise to stardom. Her life became a whirlwind of luxury and indulgence. Yet their relationship also revealed the fragility of Barbara's newfound success. Tone's aristocratic refinement clashed with Barbara's unrestrained personality, creating a dynamic as precarious as it was dazzling. Professionally, Barbara was at her zenith, attending glamorous premieres and earning accolades for her work. However, cracks began to emerge as personal scandals and professional setbacks overshadowed her career. Barbara's commitment to her family remained unwavering during this period. She supported her brother Frank and his wife, Jan, emotionally and financially, particularly during Frank's military service. However, her strained relationship with her father, Lee, persisted. Lee dismissed her Hollywood achievements, deepening the emotional wounds Barbara carried from childhood. Her longing for his approval, evident in private journal entries, underscored the vulnerability beneath her confident facade. The demands of Hollywood and her personal entanglements began to take their toll. Barbara's involvement in the murder trial of Stanley Adams drew public scrutiny, complicating her image. Tone's custody battle with his ex-wife, Jean Wallace, further mired her in controversy, with Wallace accusing Barbara of being a negative influence. These scandals eroded her standing with Warner Brothers, despite her recognition as a baby star of 1950 most likely to succeed. By early 1951, Barbara's career began to falter. She lost a lead role in The Evil Eyeful and was relegated to a minor part in Only the Valiant, where her chemistry with Gregory Peck went unnoticed. Her performance in Drums in the Deep South showed flashes of dramatic potential, but her career was overshadowed by personal distractions, including an affair with co-star Guy Madison. The scandal reached its peak when Tone discovered them together, further straining her relationship with Warner Brothers. Barbara's refusal to accept a minor role in Close to My Heart led to her suspension. Barbara's career and personal life took a dramatic and chaotic turn in 1951, marked by professional setbacks, a notorious love triangle, and one of Hollywood's most scandalous incidents. Despite being relegated to the low-budget film Bride of the Gorilla by Warner Brothers, Barbara delivered a sultry and magnetic performance as Dina, a plantation wife ensnared in a supernatural tragedy. Her commitment to the role and captivating screen presence elevated the campy material. Barbara's compassion also shone during production when she insisted on casting Raymond Burr, an act of kindness that Burr credited with revitalizing his career. Barbara's personal life plunged into chaos with the arrival of Tom Neal, an actor whose brooding charm and turbulent past mirrored Barbara's own attraction to danger and upheaval. Their intense and volatile romance collided spectacularly with her engagement to Franchot Tone, igniting a scandalous love triangle that captivated the public. As Barbara's behavior grew increasingly erratic, she brazenly flaunted her entanglement with both men, feeding a media frenzy that oscillated between moral outrage and voyeuristic obsession. Though many condemned her actions, few could resist the allure of the unfolding drama. This stormy chapter not only gripped the public's imagination, but also marked the beginning of Barbara's devastating fall from grace, as her career and reputation began to unravel under the weight of her personal turmoil. In September 1951, Barbara's love triangle with Franchot Tone and Tom Neal erupted into chaos, culminating in a violent and infamous altercation. On the eve of her planned wedding to Tom, Barbara borrowed his car under the pretense of a business meeting, but instead rekindled her affair with Franchot Tone at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The pair spent the day together, touring Sunset Strip nightclubs and flaunting their reunion, oblivious to the turmoil brewing at Barbara's apartment, where a seething Tom hosted a drunken gathering. When Barbara and Franchot returned home late that night, their laughter and drunken exuberance ignited Tom Neal's barely contained fury. The tension exploded when Barbara, with calculated defiance, kissed Franchot in front of Tom and urged him to settle it like a man. Fueled by bravado and alcohol, Franchot foolishly challenged Tom to take it outside. What followed was a savage display of violence. Tom's sheer physical strength overwhelmed Franchot in an instant, delivering a devastating punch that sent him sprawling to the ground. What began as a clash spiraled into a brutal assault, with Tom raining blows that left Franchot with catastrophic injuries: a cerebral concussion, a broken nose, a shattered cheekbone, and a fractured jaw. Barbara's attempt to intervene ended tragically as she was struck and knocked unconscious into nearby shrubbery. The savage brawl finally ceased when a guest forcibly restrained Tom, but the damage was done. Franchot was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, lingering on the edge of death for 18 agonizing hours. The violent spectacle, swiftly christened the Love Brawl by the press, eclipsed even the world's major headlines, cementing Barbara's fall from Hollywood's graces and hammering the final nail into the coffin of her shattered reputation. The media frenzy that followed was relentless. Gossip columnists like Hedda Hopper vilified Barbara as a reckless manipulator emblematic of Hollywood's loose morals. Neighbors provided salacious accounts of her lifestyle, including topless sunbathing and public arguments, further fueling her notoriety. While friends and insiders saw her as a tragic figure drawn to chaos, the public narrative framed Barbara as the architect of her downfall, casting her as a femme fatale whose beauty masked her destructive tendencies. Barbara's response to the aftermath was a blend of contrition and defiance. She maintained a vigil at Tone's hospital bedside, sneaking martinis in for him and smashing paparazzi cameras. While professing her love for Tone and pledging to marry him upon his recovery, she continued to be seen publicly with Neal, fueling even harsher criticism and speculation. The scandal irreparably damaged Barbara's career and personal reputation. Although she was not the sole architect of the turmoil, the incident highlighted her inability to escape the chaos that increasingly defined her life. Once a rising star celebrated for her beauty and talent, Barbara became a symbol of Hollywood's darker undercurrents. her career trajectory overshadowed by scandal and self-destruction. In the aftermath of the scandal, Barbara's loyalty swung erratically between Neil and Tone, reflecting her emotional turmoil. Barbara's professional decline became apparent on September 19, 1951, when she was removed from the lead role in Lady in the Iron Mask. The role, which could have revived her career, went to Patricia Medina. Officially, the studio cited Barbara's emotional instability, but producer Walter Wanger sought to avoid the growing controversies surrounding her. The scandal also brought her back into Francho's orbit after his hospital release, as the pair appeared before the district attorney to recount the fight. Barbara's testimony portrayed her as an innocent bystander, a narrative starkly at odds with the facts, revealing her denial and attempts to protect her image. Tone, physically and emotionally scarred, recounted the assault to District Attorney S. Ernest Roll, recalling how Neil's initial blow rendered him unconscious before a series of brutal punches left him severely injured. His testimony, delivered with dignity despite his fragile state, stood in stark contrast to the sensationalism surrounding the scandal. Days later, in a surprising twist, Francho dropped legal action against Neil, citing the toll on his family, friends, and career. While his decision ended the legal proceedings, it left lingering questions about the motivations and integrity of everyone involved. Amid this turmoil, Barbara retreated to her hometown of Cloquet, Minnesota, with her young son John Lee seeking a reprieve from Hollywood's relentless scrutiny. Shortly after, Francho joined her, creating another media spectacle when they reunited at the Duluth Municipal Airport, with photographers capturing the dramatic moment as Barbara rushed to embrace him. The couple married in a modest civil ceremony at Barbara's childhood home on September 28th. The intimate affair was attended by a handful of close relatives, though her parents were notably absent. Barbara, dressed in a navy blue Parisian suit, appeared radiant, while Francho's charm endured despite the visible remnants of his injuries. The press romanticized the event, casting it as a storybook union, even as the whirlwind romance remained fraught with the volatility that had come to define their lives. Barbara's marriage to Francho Tone faced skepticism and disapproval from the outset. Her parents, Lee and Mabel, distanced themselves, embarrassed by her recent behavior, while her brother Frank dismissed the union as fleeting and chose not to attend. In Cloquet, local officials lamented the negative attention Barbara brought to their town, and even the officiating judge, Ed J. Johnson, noted the disruptive nature of the event. After a brief honeymoon in Canada, Barbara and Francho returned to Hollywood, resuming their turbulent existence. Their erratic living arrangements reflected the instability of their marriage, and the happiness of their union was quickly overshadowed by yet another scandal. On October 5, 1951, Barbara was subpoenaed to testify before a federal grand jury in connection to the murder of Abe Davidian, reigniting public scrutiny and casting further doubt on her credibility. The couple's attempt to salvage Barbara's public image through a promotional tour for her film, Drums in the Deep South, backfired spectacularly. Traveling through southern cities, their appearances were met with derision and mockery. In Atlanta, Birmingham, and Memphis, audiences were lukewarm at best, with some booing Barbara outright, and in Miami, the couple was greeted with a satirical reenactment of the infamous Tom Neil Francho Tone fight. In late October 1951, Francho Tone found himself embroiled in yet another public scandal, this time involving gossip columnist Floribel Muir at the famed Kiro's nightclub. Frustrated by Muir's relentless critiques of him, Barbara, and Tom Neil, Francho confronted her in a tense and drunken exchange. The confrontation escalated into an altercation, with Francho spitting at Muir and attempting to choke her with her necklace, creating a chaotic scene that shocked onlookers, including Barbara and Francho's mother. The bizarre spectacle, described as both aggressive and absurd, further tarnished Francho's once dignified public image. The incident did not end there. Muir, humiliated and enraged, called the police, leading to Francho's arrest on assault charges and a night in jail. The media gleefully reported on the so-called spittle tiff, with headlines mocking Francho and drawing parallels to his infamous fight with Tom Neil. Muir's subsequent columns lambasted both Franchot and Barbara, portraying them as symbols of Hollywood's moral decline. Franchot eventually pleaded guilty to battery, receiving a $400 fine and a suspended sentence, but the damage to his reputation was irrevocable. Barbara's own standing continued to erode under relentless media scrutiny. While she faced additional legal entanglements, including another summons in the Stanley Adams case, former associates like Don Cougar came forward with claims about financially supporting her during difficult times. These revelations, coupled with her history of scandal and reckless behavior, further alienated Barbara from Hollywood's elite. Despite some sympathetic voices in the press, the overwhelming judgment cast Barbara and Franchot as a cautionary tale of fame, undone by chaos and poor choices. Their marriage, already strained by public ridicule and personal betrayals, seemed on the brink of collapse. The unrelenting cycle of scandals, court appearances, and media attacks left little room for Barbara or Franchot to recover, solidifying their fall from grace as one of Hollywood's most infamous stories. Barbara's career faced a devastating blow in November 1951 when William Cagney declined to renew her contract, and Warner Brothers followed suit, effectively ending her once promising trajectory in Hollywood. Just 22 months after signing a high-profile deal, Barbara's professional downfall was sealed by relentless scandals, her volatile relationships, and bad press. Jack Warner, who had little patience for her behavior, used his influence to ensure she became a pariah in the industry, with major studios like MGM and 20th Century Fox distancing themselves. Once viewed as a rising star, Barbara was now seen as a liability, her potential overshadowed by her personal turmoil. Despite being free from her contract, Barbara found the industry's shift in attitude toward her hard to ignore. MGM and 20th Century Fox, who had previously shown interest in her, quickly distanced themselves, a reflection of the growing disdain for her behavior. Meanwhile, her brief marriage to Franchot Tone, which had started with promise, unraveled in just 7 weeks. After a drunken argument, Barbara walked out on Franchot, and he filed for divorce, citing extreme mental cruelty. However, the couple reconciled just 2 days later, indulging in a public display of affection and reaffirming their love in an almost absurd fashion. As their relationship spiraled further, Barbara's behavior continued to fuel the gossip mill. The press eagerly awaited each new act of dysfunction, and Barbara did not disappoint. As she prepared for another promotional tour, rumors circulated that she had resumed her affair with Tom Neal, the man who had nearly caused Franchot's death. Despite his attempts to ignore the reality of the situation, Franchot was once again forced to watch helplessly as Barbara's chaotic life took center stage, with no end in sight. By December, it was clear that Barbara and Tom had rekindled their affair, despite the chaos surrounding their lives. Exposed magazine eagerly reported on their reunion, with Barbara later admitting to her intense attraction to him, describing their passionate relationship in romanticized terms. Franchot, humiliated by the public spectacle of his wife's renewed involvement with Tom, decided to reinstate his divorce petition. Meanwhile, Barbara and Tom boldly embraced their relationship, giving joint interviews where they defiantly flaunted their bond. In these interviews, she often came across as rude, sullen, and confrontational, displaying a radical and rebellious side that was at odds with America's expectations of a woman in the 1950s. During their cross-country publicity tour, Barbara and Tom's public behavior became increasingly erratic, attracting negative attention from both the press and Hollywood insiders. Their antics at popular night spots like Cyro's and Mocambo were widely discussed, with Barbara's excessive drinking and flirtations often escalating into confrontations. Skip E. Lowe, an industry observer, recalled how Barbara would egg Tom on, leading to chaotic scenes where she needed to be dragged out of clubs. She even confided in Lowe that she enjoyed rough, physically intense sex with Tom, describing their relationship as deeply intertwined and addictive. Author John Gilmore, who knew the couple, described their bond as a seedy, destructive addiction, one that would likely be unsustainable for anyone with a shred of emotional sensitivity. Despite the mounting negative press, Barbara remained unapologetic, she told industry figure A.C. Lyles that she was aware of the bad publicity but didn't care, as she was enjoying herself. As the situation worsened, her friends and colleagues warned her that her relationship with Tom was jeopardizing her career, but Barbara dismissed their concerns, continuing to embrace the chaotic alliance. Eventually, it was decided that Barbara should embark on another press tour, once again accompanied by Tom, in an attempt to shift the narrative, even as her career teetered on the edge. Barbara's promotional tour for Bride of the Gorilla in December 1951 revealed a career and personal life spiraling out of control. Beginning in Chicago, she appeared at strip show venues and posed for campy publicity stunts, including standing in the freezing cold with a man in a gorilla suit. Despite her apparent obliviousness, these appearances marked a stark decline from her earlier co-starring roles alongside Hollywood giants like James Cagney and Gregory Peck. Her career trajectory was now clearly veering into irrelevance. The tour moved to New York City, where Barbara and Tom mingled at cocktail parties with socialites and gossip columnists. However, Barbara's restlessness led to chaos when she left Tom one night to party with a group of rodeo cowboys, resulting in a drunken brawl, a trashed hotel room, and several arrests. True to form, Barbara provoked the men into fighting for her attention before slipping away unscathed. The fallout included negative press and even a protest by the cowboys outside a theater showing her film, an event she seemingly laughed off. This episode epitomized Barbara's reckless quest for attention, a pattern that combined an insatiable need for validation with self-sabotaging behavior. Her actions mirrored the struggles of later tabloid figures like Jane Mansfield and Anna Nicole Smith, revealing an addiction to both adoration and notoriety. As pop psychologist Dr. Joyce Brothers would later explain, such narcissism often stems from a childhood lacking in attention and affection, leading to fragile self-esteem and a subconscious drive to undermine success. For Barbara, each scandal fed her defiance, but also highlighted her inability to find lasting fulfillment. Following a series of public altercations with Tom Neal in New York City, Barbara returned to Hollywood briefly, only to reunite with her estranged husband, Franchot Tone, in late December 1951. Despite Tone filing for divorce, the couple reconciled yet again in January 1952, much to the bewilderment of their peers. However, their reconciliation proved short-lived and marred by dramatic episodes, including a violent fight in March at Manhattan's Warwick Hotel. After Tone caught Barbara speaking with Tom on the phone, a heated argument erupted, culminating in Barbara's impulsive overdose on sleeping pills. Though Tone managed to save her life, this episode marked the breaking point for their fraught relationship. Tone's attempts to mold Barbara into his ideal of a refined partner were ultimately futile, as her emotional wounds ran too deep. Tone's biographer, Lisa Burks, suggests that his altruism and desire to help those he cared for clashed with Barbara's inability or unwillingness to change. Following the overdose, Tone ended the marriage for good, leaving Barbara to return to Los Angeles alone. Barbara soon discovered that Franchot had never dismissed his divorce suit, despite leading her to believe otherwise. Feeling manipulated and betrayed, Barbara accused Tone of using their brief reconciliation to control her emotionally and financially. Her attorney argued that Tone's actions were calculated to exploit her trust and convenience. Outraged, Barbara filed a cross-complaint, asserting her right to contest the divorce and accusing Tone of trying to starve her out by staying in New York while depriving her of support. In court, Barbara sought $1,500 per month in alimony and $100,000 in community property, estimating Tone's assets at $1 million. She portrayed herself as a victim of deceit and vowed to stand up for her rights while expressing a desire to move forward with her life and career. However, her defiant stance was undercut by her next move. In a fateful and impulsive decision, Barbara invited Tom Neal back into her life and home. In her typical romanticized way, she later described their reunion as an irresistible pull, a surrender to passion that brought them back together. Yet this choice would prove to be another misstep in her increasingly chaotic personal and professional life, as she once again prioritized fleeting emotions over stability or strategy. Franchot escalated his divorce case against Barbara by employing detectives to surveil her home and document her relationship with Tom Neal. Initially capturing innocuous photos of the pair embracing, the investigation soon yielded explosive results. In April 1952, the detectives secured explicit photographs of Barbara engaging in intimate acts with Tom in a Hollywood motel. These images became pivotal evidence in Franchot's amended divorce complaint, serving as proof of Barbara's infidelity. The scandal deepened when unconfirmed reports suggested the detectives had also captured compromising images of Barbara with Woody Strode, a former football star and minor actor. While these claims remain unsubstantiated, the damaging photos of Barbara and Tom were used against her in court and circulated privately by a vindictive Franchot. Seeking to ruin Barbara's reputation and career, he distributed copies to various parties, including her own brother, Frank, and sister-in-law, Jan. The gesture shocked and appalled Barbara's family, who saw it as an uncharacteristically cruel act from Franchot, revealing how bitter the saga had made him. By the time Barbara's tumultuous marriage to Franchot Tone reached its bitter end in May 1952, their relationship had devolved into a public spectacle of accusations, betrayals, and scandal. Franchot, deeply hurt by Barbara's repeated infidelities and her penchant for airing private matters to the press, had reached his breaking point. In a desperate bid to deflect blame, Barbara made wild claims to the press, alleging that Franchot had threatened her and Tom's lives and that she had only taken Tom in as a bodyguard. Franchot countered with irrefutable evidence of her adultery, ultimately leading to a swift divorce ruling in his favor on May 17, 1952. Barbara's attempts to portray herself as a victim fell apart, and her plea for alimony was reduced to a request that Franchot pay for furniture they had ordered together. Following the divorce, Barbara's candid remark to the press summed up her inability to grasp the gravity of her actions. "When I married Tone, I thought it would last forever, but forever is just a weekend, more or less." She also announced her intention to return to Tom Neal if he would have her. Tom predictably welcomed Barbara back into his life, voicing an almost pitiable hope for their future. He gushed to reporters about wanting to marry her and have a large family, but Barbara's response was far more ambivalent. She dismissed his enthusiasm, deflecting attention back to her career. Amid her personal and professional upheaval, Barbara's relationships with her family offered fleeting moments of connection. Her parents, Lee and Mabel Redfield, relocated to San Diego, creating a serene home that starkly contrasted with Barbara's tumultuous life. The emotional gap between Barbara and her father persisted, reflecting unresolved tensions from her childhood. Meanwhile, her son lived primarily with the Zollinger family, providing him with stability that Barbara could not offer. During their brief visits, Barbara lavished affection on her son, creating cherished but bittersweet memories. While these separations pained both mother and child, Barbara pragmatically believed the arrangement was necessary as she attempted to regain control over her unraveling life. During the summer of 1952, Barbara briefly returned to modeling, collaborating with renowned photographer André de Diana, whose portraits highlighted her enduring beauty. At home, she charmed Tom's family with her culinary skills and playful humor, demonstrating a nurturing side rarely seen in public. Yet her excessive drinking hinted at deeper vulnerabilities beneath her bold exterior. Her relationship with Neal epitomized her defiant and chaotic nature. Barbara approached his infidelities with amused detachment, her irreverence masking her inner struggles. At a dinner party, her infamous remark, "Everything in this apartment was paid for on my back, and I'm damn proud of it," shocked guests. While Neal laughed it off, those close to her, like his nephew Walter, saw the comment as a reflection of her pain. Seeking a fresh start, Barbara moved to London in July 1952, hoping to reignite her career and escape the relentless scrutiny of Hollywood scandals. Initially embraced by the British public, her roles in Four-Sided Triangle and The Flanagan Boy offered opportunities to channel her off-screen notoriety into compelling characters. However, the lackluster quality of the films and her uninspired performances failed to revitalize her career. By the time Neil joined her in London, reigniting their volatile relationship, Barbara's star had already dimmed. The critical and commercial failures of her London projects cemented her transition from a Hollywood sensation to a mere figure of tabloid intrigue. Barbara returned to Hollywood in November with Tom Neal in tow, adopting a conspicuously thick British accent that raised eyebrows even among her allies, like columnist Sheila Graham. Declaring Tom as her new manager, Barbara vowed to accept only strong film roles. But by December, her lofty aspirations had already crumbled. She signed on to co-star with scandal-ridden actor Sonny Tufts in the low-budget comedy Run for the Hills, wearing a cave girl costume and delivering a performance that further cemented her career's downward trajectory. By late 1952, Barbara's attempts to salvage her career foundered. Financial strains mounted as she deferred her salary for profit shares that never materialized, fueling tensions with Neil. Barbara's tumultuous relationship with Tom continued to spiral out of control, marked by alcohol-fueled arguments, physical violence, and increasingly public spectacles. After being ejected from a party in Laurel Canyon for their destructive behavior, their volatile dynamic took center stage in their professional lives as well. In early 1953, Tom, hoping to capitalize on their fading fame, pitched the couple as a package deal to Lippert Pictures, a studio known for low-budget films. The result was The Great Jesse James Raid, a Western that was hastily made in just 8 days, where Barbara played a saloon singer named Kate and Tom portrayed a lecherous thug. Their off-screen exhaustion and discord were evident in their lifeless performances, with Barbara appearing bloated and Tom visibly fatigued. A few moments of authenticity shone through Barbara's performance, particularly in a wistful line that seemed to echo her own struggles. Funny how you sometimes meet the nice ones at the wrong time. The film, despite its lackluster quality, was a financial success, with 4,500 bookings and a modest profit for Lippert Pictures. Hoping to revitalize the waning public interest in them, Barbara and Tom embarked on a summer stock tour of The Postman Always Rings Twice in June 1953, taking on roles made iconic by Lana Turner and John Garfield. The production leaned heavily on their real-life notoriety, with provocative advertisements emphasizing their torrid onstage chemistry. While some, like Leslie Snyder, were captivated by their fiery connection, reviews were largely critical. Variety dismissed their performances as lackluster, describing certain scenes as downright embarrassing. Despite the initial buzz, the tour quickly faltered. A promotional photo taken in Chicago on July 23rd revealed a stark change in Barbara's appearance. Her once glamorous allure diminished. That same night, during the play's opening at the Drury Lane Theater, Barbara collapsed twice on stage. Though officially attributed to a muscle spasm, rumors swirled that her collapse was due to heavy drinking before the performance. Whatever the cause, the incident led to the cancellation of the show and refunds for an upset audience. By the end of the summer 1953 tour of Postman, Barbara and Tom's turbulent relationship had spiraled into mutual destruction. As the production limped through small towns, rumors of violent altercations between the couple made headlines, with columnist Dorothy Kilgallen likening their fiery clashes to battles worthy of Texas legend. The tour ended in September, leaving the pair with dwindling prospects and $1,500 a week earnings that failed to counterbalance their reputational and professional decline. Their relationship, riddled with alcohol-fueled fights and professional missteps, quickly spiraled into mutual ruin. Hollywood insiders viewed them as irredeemable bottom fish, their antics pushing them further to the fringes of the industry. Despite fleeting moments of happiness and connection, their union collapsed under the weight of constant turmoil and animosity. By late 1953, the couple's relationship ended in a final rupture, with Neil leaving Barbara's apartment and later Hollywood altogether. Barbara, ever defiant, shrugged off the breakup with characteristic wit, remarking, "He sure was great while he lasted." Yet the end of their relationship marked another chapter in Barbara's downward spiral, her reliance on alcohol and bad decisions continuing to define her troubled journey. Following her final breakup with Tom in late 1953, Barbara turned her attention to her 6-year-old son, John Lee, who had been living with the Zollingers. Their reunion was marked by heartfelt efforts to create cherished memories, such as a magical Christmas filled with sleigh bells and laughter. Despite her deep love for John Lee, Barbara's inability to maintain stability often left him vulnerable to the chaos of her life. Despite the warmth of their reunion, Barbara's pattern of self-sabotage soon resurfaced, this time through her relationship with a young black artist named Budo. While the relationship was brief, Budo left a lasting impression on John Lee, who recalls him as a kind, patient figure who embraced him as part of his life with Barbara. Together, Budo and John spent time building and flying balsa wood airplanes, forging a bond that John would cherish for years. However, the relationship remained hidden from Barbara's parents due to Lee's deeply ingrained prejudices, which would have caused a backlash had they known. For John, Budo was a bright spot in his mother's tumultuous life, a man who offered genuine care and creativity. Yet, as with many of Barbara's relationships, it was fleeting, leaving behind tender memories but no lasting stability. Through these moments, John Lee saw both the beauty and the chaos of his mother's world. The seemingly serene and artistic Budo revealed a terrifying dark side when he inexplicably flew into a rage one evening, chasing 6-year-old John Lee with a butcher knife. Though the exact circumstances remain unclear, John Lee remembers fearing for his life as Budo screamed and slashed at him while he hid under a table. The horrifying incident, lasting several agonizing minutes, ended when Budo fled to the attic, where he remained hidden for 2 days. Barbara's reaction to the attack was deeply unsettling. Whether out of pity for Budo, fear of negative publicity, or her penchant for drama, she delayed calling the police, allowing the man who had terrorized her son to remain in the house. Her failure to act swiftly highlighted her erratic maternal instincts and her inability to prioritize her son's safety over the chaos she seemed drawn to. After 2 days of tension, during which Budo refused to come down from the attic, Barbara finally contacted the police. They arrived, coaxed him out, and promptly arrested him. The incident marked a profoundly traumatic moment in John Lee's young life, underscoring the instability and danger that pervaded Barbara's world, a chaos that, tragically, now directly threatened her child. Seeking a fresh start, Barbara moved to a ranch-style home on North Beverly Drive in 1954. The house became a canvas for her creative energy, with vibrant colors and custom designs reflecting her artistic spirit. For John Lee, the home offered a sanctuary of warmth and tender moments, such as birthdays and shared laughter. However, Barbara's erratic lifestyle and frequent absences forced her young son to shoulder household responsibilities with remarkable independence. Barbara's personal relationships during this time were similarly fraught. Short-lived affairs, including one with actor Mickey Knox, showcased her yearning for affection and stability, yet they often ended in disappointment. A life-threatening ectopic pregnancy further exposed Barbara's vulnerability as she fled the hospital prematurely despite the severity of her condition. Moments of care from her mother, Mabel, and the affection she showed her son hinted at her enduring desire for love and stability, but her unresolved trauma and possible mental health issues left these connections strained and fleeting. By the mid-1950s, Barbara's glamorous facade began to crumble. Her once elegant gatherings devolved into chaotic spectacles, mirroring her unraveling life. John Lee observed the hypocrisy of Hollywood elites who participated in her excesses yet later distanced themselves when her struggles became public. Efforts to reconcile with figures from her past, including her first husband John Payton, were short-lived, as the instability of her lifestyle made lasting relationships impossible. Professionally, Barbara's career continued its decline. Her nuanced performance in Murder Is My Beat, 1954, a low-budget noir directed by Edgar G. Ulmer, revealed glimpses of her talent, but the film's modest production values failed to reignite her career. By her late 20s, her radiant beauty had faded under the weight of relentless scandals, reckless behavior, and industry rejection, leaving her reputation tarnished and opportunities scarce. Amid this turmoil, Barbara's candid sensuality and pursuit of intimacy became defining traits. A fleeting connection with Marlon Brando epitomized her allure and transient existence. While these relationships highlighted her magnetic charm, they underscored her inability to find lasting emotional fulfillment. Even her brief reprieve in Mexico, where she found moments of joy with her son and a romance with businessman Tony Provas, failed to offer the stability she desperately sought. Her time in Guaymas, marked by idyllic beach walks and fishing trips, was both a sanctuary and a backdrop to her enduring struggles. By 1955, Barbara's life had entered a relentless downward spiral. Losing her Beverly Drive home symbolized the end of her glamorous Hollywood chapter, while her involvement with Don Metz, a figure tied to the underworld, further complicated her life. Financial instability and personal crises mounted, pushing her further from the promise of her earlier stardom. Her romance with Tony Provas initially offered a glimmer of stability. Their time in Mexico brought rare moments of peace, as Barbara endeared herself to Tony's family and briefly embraced the tranquility of her surroundings. However, her growing dependence on alcohol and unresolved emotional pain soon fractured their relationship. When Barbara returned to Los Angeles, the fragile stability unraveled entirely. Arrested for writing bad checks, a moment witnessed by her young son, John Lee, Barbara faced public humiliation and legal troubles that underscored her fall from grace. In November 1955, Barbara impulsively married Tony in Nogales, Arizona, clinging to the hope of a fresh start. Yet the union, burdened by financial strain, Barbara's worsening alcoholism, and persistent legal issues, quickly faltered. By early 1956, the devastating loss of custody of her son proved a crushing blow. Deemed unfit to parent, Barbara was allowed only supervised visits. Their single, heart-wrenching reunion, filled with apologies and love, marked their final goodbye. For John, his mother's tearful embrace became a bittersweet memory that lingered as an enduring reminder of her love. Barbara's struggles deepened in the mid-1950s as she became further estranged from Hollywood, tarnished by scandal and her own self-destructive decisions. An attempt to retaliate against an expose in Bear magazine by selling a salacious story about her affair with Bob Hope to Confidential only alienated her further from the industry. Seeking refuge, she returned to Mexico with her husband, Tony Provas, briefly finding solace in caring for animals and restoring furniture. However, her battle with alcoholism eroded the fragile peace they tried to build. In 1957, Barbara and Tony moved to the remote coastal village of Keno Bay, an isolated attempt to escape the chaos of her past. Though the quiet beaches offered a fleeting sense of reprieve, her inner turmoil remained ever present. Hoping to convince her family that her life was improving, Barbara invited her mother and father to join them for Thanksgiving. Despite Lee's reluctance, Mabel, driven by a desire to reconnect with her daughter, convinced him to make the trip. When Lee and Mabel arrived, the reality of Barbara's life was stark and devastating. Living in a dilapidated shack far from the luxury she once knew, Barbara's circumstances stood in harsh contrast to her former Hollywood glamour. Mabel, who had lovingly prepared a Thanksgiving turkey and fixings, cooked the meal on a primitive wood-burning stove. The surreal holiday gathering included a local priest Barbara and Tony had befriended, offering Mabel some comfort that her daughter had a respectable confidant. Lee, however, remained withdrawn, his disapproval of Tony and the state of Barbara's life only deepening. Tony later acknowledged the pain Barbara's parents must have felt witnessing her diminished state, knowing they viewed him as a symbol of her decline. Despite his claims of doing his best to support her, the visit underscored the heartbreak of a family grappling with the loss of the vibrant woman Barbara once was. Shortly after, Barbara confided in her mother about her unhappiness. With her family's quiet help, she orchestrated her escape from Keno Bay, leaving Tony behind. One day, he returned home to find only a note explaining her departure, bringing their turbulent relationship to an abrupt end. Barbara briefly sought a fresh start in Riverside, California, with the help of her high school friend, Enoch. Together, they opened the Boar's Head, a restaurant and bar featuring live jazz. Barbara poured her energy into decorating and hosting, momentarily reclaiming a sense of joy and purpose. However, the venture was doomed by poor location and minimal advertising, quickly leading to its closure. A heated argument with Enoch prompted Barbara to leave abruptly, taking expensive bar stools she sold to fund a trip to Chicago, further alarming her already concerned family. In Chicago, Barbara aligned herself with Lila Leeds, a once promising actress whose career and life had been derailed by drug addiction and legal troubles. Lila's notoriety stemmed from a 1948 marijuana arrest with Robert Mitchum, and by the time Barbara joined her, Lila's life was mired in instability and dangerous choices. Their shared circumstances painted a stark picture of desperation. Barbara, burdened by guilt, self-loathing, and the loss of her son, entered the world of organized prostitution, her most devastating decision yet. Trading on her physical appeal furthered her spiral, with family and friends lamenting the paths she chose despite having other options. Living together in a suite at the Drake Hotel, Barbara and Lila's exploits soon attracted law enforcement attention. Lila's arrest for soliciting ended in imprisonment, while Barbara managed to return to the West Coast before being implicated. This marked the end of their partnership and likely their friendship. Lila eventually turned her life around, becoming an ordained minister in 1973, a redemption Barbara would tragically never find. As one friend observed, they looked and acted so much alike, they could have been twin sisters. Too bad Barbara didn't wise up like Lila eventually did. Barbara's return to Hollywood marked yet another chapter in her downward spiral. Living with Bobby Hall, a volatile B-movie actor known for his reckless and abusive behavior, Barbara's life had devolved into a bleak existence of chaos and poor choices. Their toxic relationship, lived out in a small hotel room, reflected the turbulence that defined her later years, a far cry from the glamour she once knew. By the late 1950s, fleeting attempts at stability, such as a brief reconciliation with Tony Provas, ended in familiar patterns of financial hardship and emotional dysfunction. Despite public declarations of an annulment and accusations against Tony, the couple remarried in Nogales and settled on his family's farm in Mexico. Initially hopeful, their life in a modest cinder-block house showed glimmers of normalcy as Tony worked the fields and Barbara contributed where she could. However, her escalating alcoholism and deteriorating mental health quickly eroded any semblance of peace. Friends and family observed Barbara's decline with growing concern. During her visits to California, she appeared frail and unwell, with her drinking and erratic behavior overshadowing any efforts to rebuild her life. Even Tony later admitted their second marriage had been doomed by Barbara's inability to escape her destructive patterns. Eventually, she left both Tony and Mexico behind, severing yet another tie in her increasingly transient and troubled journey. By 1959, Barbara Payton's life had devolved into a bleak fight for survival, far removed from her Hollywood stardom. Leaving her husband and life in Mexico behind, she moved into the dilapidated Valencia apartments near Sunset Boulevard, a faded symbol of the glamour she had once embodied. Though traces of her beauty remained, years of addiction and hardship were etched into her face. With acting opportunities gone, Barbara took menial jobs, including stints as a restaurant hostess and a counter girl at a dry cleaner. Serving celebrities who had once entertained her in their homes was a humiliating reminder of her lost status, and whispered remarks only deepened her shame. Her escalating dependence on alcohol cost her these jobs, isolating her further. Seeking respite, Barbara returned to her parents' dysfunctional San Diego home, where heavy drinking and unresolved tension clouded the atmosphere. Her mother mirrored Barbara's struggles with alcoholism, while her father remained cold and critical. Their strained relationship pushed Barbara to rebel in small acts, such as painting her room black, only for arguments to send her fleeing back to Hollywood, adrift and with no clear path forward. In Los Angeles, Barbara's life spiraled further. Reduced to sex work to survive, she drifted between cities, relationships, and fleeting jobs. A visit to her brother Frank revealed the depth of her decline. He barely recognized the once vibrant woman she had been. By the early 1960s, her physical and emotional deterioration, paired with the grind of survival, painted a tragic picture of a life consumed by loss and hardship. A brief stint in Palm Springs saw her working as a $100 a night escort, clinging to the illusion of her movie star identity. Men like to go to bed with a movie star, she rationalized, though her coarse appearance and faded allure left her struggling to attract clients. Evicted from the Riviera Hotel for her activities, Barbara's life continued its relentless descent. Barbara's journey took her to Searchlight, Nevada, where she lived briefly in a small apartment behind a casino and dated a gambler she later referred to as Dick Fortune. Resuming sex work, her life there was fleeting and unstable. Eventually, she returned to California, arriving at her brother Frank's home in West Covina in visible disrepair. Frank was shocked by her destitute state, a haunting reflection of how far she had fallen. Back in Hollywood, Barbara settled again at the Valencia Apartments, attempting to piece her life together and rekindle her acting career. These efforts were futile, as her physical and emotional decline rendered her unrecognizable to an industry that had long abandoned her. Her estranged husband, Tony Provas, encountered her one final time at the Cock and Bull restaurant. Alarmed by her deteriorated appearance and drinking, Tony finalized their divorce, closing the door on their tumultuous relationship. Desperation led Barbara to pursue transactional relationships with producers and casting agents, but these yielded little. In one humiliating encounter, a producer offered her significantly less money than before, bluntly stating, "You've lost a little since then." By 1961, Barbara's attempts to reclaim her stardom had dwindled into despair. Posing for nude photos in dingy studios above Sunset Strip, she traded dignity for rent and liquor money, clinging to false hope. The endeavor yielded nothing, officially ending her futile efforts to revive her career. Unemployable and destitute, Barbara turned to prostitution, rationalizing her choices in her autobiography. When the big money stops coming in, money becomes something real. Amid the darkness, Barbara's compassion surfaced when she rescued a starving Cocker Spaniel, Tux, seeing in him a reflection of her own abandonment. Defying her building's rules, she cared for him until her eviction left her homeless. Brief respite came when two kind-hearted locals, Chip and Dale, took her in, offering a semblance of family. But this sanctuary was short-lived, as Barbara's reputation once again forced her out. Choosing to protect Tux from her harsh reality, she left him in their care, a selfless act that broke her heart. Barbara's downward spiral continued as she wandered the streets of Hollywood, unkempt and disheveled, a shadow of her former self. Small acts of kindness, like complimentary hair treatments from a former employer, offered fleeting glimpses of her past glamour. Yet consumed by addiction, Barbara's search for solace only deepened her misfortune. Barbara's life reached a harrowing low in 1962. On February 7th, she was arrested for prostitution after offering sex to an undercover officer for $40. The haunting mugshots captured that day, tear-streaked puffy cheeks and vacant eyes, became a stark visual reminder of her tragic decline, a far cry from the radiant starlet she once was. Later that year, on July 21st, Barbara stumbled into a Hollywood police station in a state of disarray, claiming she had been attacked by a teenage gang. Her battered appearance, bruises, bite marks, and missing teeth told a harrowing story, though her inconsistent and intoxicated account undermined her claims. The image of her at the station, nervously adjusting her bathing suit with distant, glassy eyes, became a haunting symbol of her shattered dreams and fading humanity. Detectives showed her compassion, paying for her cab ride home, but the media seized the moment, amplifying her fall with cruel commentary. Barbara's struggles continued unabated. Found passed out at a Sunset Boulevard bus stop the next morning, barefoot and still wearing the same bathing suit, she was arrested for public drunkenness. Days later, police responded to complaints of a loud party and found Barbara nude, intoxicated, and desperately trying to cover herself with a bathrobe. Her inebriation led to her arrest, further fueling the media's sensational coverage. Scandal magazines cruelly dissected her appearance, describing her as worn, haggard, and spent, in sharp contrast to the glowing tributes of her beauty years earlier. Franchot Tone, reflecting on Barbara's tragic decline, expressed enduring sympathy for the woman he had once loved. From his refined life in New York high society, where he found solace in the theater and works like Eugene O'Neill's Strange Interlude, Tone's stability stood in stark contrast to Barbara's downward spiral into addiction, poverty, and exploitation. Her life, once radiant with promise, had become a haunting portrait of Hollywood's unforgiving nature. By late 1962, Barbara was squatting in an abandoned Hollywood Hills home and clinging to remnants of her former identity, even offering to pose for photographs in exchange for money. By 1963, the depth of her decline was undeniable. Witnesses described her leathery skin, disheveled appearance, and teeth in disrepair. Her days were consumed by panhandling and selling off belongings, all to sustain her addictions. These dark days were filled with violence and exploitation. A client stabbed her during an encounter, leaving her with a deep scar and a chilling indifference to her own suffering. As her self-worth diminished, so did the price of her services, falling to as little as $5 per encounter. Panhandling on Sunset Boulevard, she was often too intoxicated to collect payment. Her family, particularly her mother, shielded the full extent of her suffering from her father adhering to a painful silence about Barbara's plight. Amid the degradation, Barbara clung to fragile spiritual symbols, carrying a statue of St. Jude, the patron saint of lost causes, in her purse. In moments of drunken despair, she would pull it out, pleading for solace or railing against God for the cruel twists of her fate. In September 1963, her Sunset Boulevard apartment was raided, leading to another prostitution charge and 22 days in jail. Isolated in her cell, Barbara seemed to find brief respite from the chaos of the streets, but the toll on her mind and body had severed her from the vibrant starlet she once was. Desperate for money and eager to reclaim her narrative, Barbara collaborated with gossip columnist Leo Guild, who reportedly offered her $2,000 for her story. The result was her memoir, I Am Not Ashamed. Writing from squalor, she offered raw reflections on fame and personal ruin. However, critics dismissed the book as chaotic and exploitative, overshadowed by trashy motel photographs and sensationalized headline-grabbing quotes. Attempts to stabilize Barbara's life were futile. Arrests for shoplifting and drug possession led to brief stints in jail, but no lasting rehabilitation. Visits from family revealed her deteriorated state, frail, toothless, and emotionally broken. Denied institutional care, she was left to navigate a bleak existence on her own, clinging to fleeting relationships and meager work opportunities, such as managing a crumbling Sunset Boulevard hotel. Covered in visible scars and poorly applied makeup, her physical appearance mirrored the profound hardships she endured. Barbara's later years were a heartbreaking reflection of a life once filled with promise, now mired in poverty and addiction. Living in squalor at places like the derelict Wilcox Hotel, she found camaraderie with others whose lives had unraveled, including Ed Wood and Matthew Stymie Beard. Despite her deteriorating circumstances, conversations about literature, such as Ulysses, revealed flashes of the intellect and potential she had once embodied. Her relationship with John Rayborn, a fellow addict and former actor, highlighted their shared despair, with occasional moments of connection eclipsed by the weight of their mutual struggles. According to Rayborn, she dreamed of performing Shakespeare. Clinging to fragments of hope, she carried with her a crumpled Bible verse. Joshua 1:9, Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go, which she often recited through tears, seeking solace in its words. Yet these aspirations remained out of reach as her life became a fight for survival. She worked as a housekeeper at the condemned Hollywood Palms Motel, cleaning rooms to pay for her own lodging. By the mid-1960s, Barbara's life had become a heartbreaking reflection of Hollywood's harsh realities. A familiar figure at the Coach and Horses Bar on Sunset Boulevard, she drowned her pain in alcohol, her swollen and sunburned appearance far removed from her once glamorous image. Clad in soiled dressing gowns and gold slippers, she spent her nights hunched over a shot glass, lamenting how Hollywood had betrayed her. At closing time, she would stagger into the night, hitchhiking home and repeating the haunting refrain, I'm flat broke. Sunset Boulevard, often called Hollywood's dream dump, became her stage of shattered dreams. Barbara's yearning for recognition took her to movie premieres, not as an honored guest, but as a faceless figure on the sidelines. Once a darling of red carpets, she now stood among the crowd, peering past the velvet ropes at a world that had discarded her. Bloated and visibly intoxicated, she hoped someone would notice her, but the indifference of onlookers only fueled her rage. In her mind, she was still the luminous star of her prime, unable to grasp why the world no longer cared. Finding solace in the anonymity of darkened movie theaters, Barbara often escaped into the flickering fantasies of the silver screen. She frequented places like the Oriental, a rundown cinema on Sunset Boulevard, showing old double features. Despite her dire circumstances, she clung to remnants of her former self, washing her hair in restrooms or painting her nails with gifts from kind theater staff. Yet even these small respites were fleeting, as her worsening condition often led to her being barred after passing out in her seat. The lives of Barbara Payton and Tom Neal, once entwined in scandal, followed equally tragic trajectories. Neal, whose career had ended in disgrace, sought redemption through a landscaping business, but faced continued turmoil after the death of his second wife Patricia and a string of tumultuous relationships. In 1965, his volatile jealousy culminated in the fatal shooting of his third wife, Gail Lee Cloke. Convicted of involuntary manslaughter, Neal served several years in prison, where he turned to meditation and Christian Science for solace. After his release in 1971, he lived a modest life, reconnecting with his son Patrick before his sudden death in 1972. Barbara's appearance at Neal's sentencing in 1965, disheveled and unrecognizable, symbolized their shared self-destruction. While Neal sought a measure of redemption, Barbara remained trapped in her struggles, clinging to memories of her past, but unable to reconcile them with her harsh present. In contrast, Franchot Tone, Barbara's former husband, navigated his later years with dignity, devoting himself to theater and maintaining amicable relationships with his ex-wives. Tone's life stood in sharp opposition to the tragic arcs of Barbara and Tom. His creative legacy endured until his death from lung cancer in 1968. Barbara Payton's final years and death encapsulate a devastating decline from Hollywood stardom to a life of pain, regret, and isolation. By early 1967, her physical condition reflected the toll of chronic alcoholism, malnutrition, and severe liver damage. After collapsing in a parking lot, she was hospitalized and later returned to her parents' home, confined to a makeshift bedroom where she grappled with physical agony and emotional despair. In the final months of her life, Barbara was estranged from her fifth husband, antiques dealer Jess Raleigh, whom she had reportedly married in 1962, and was seeking a divorce. Little is known about Raleigh, described as a mystery man by Barbara's brother, Frank Redfield, who noted that neither he nor their parents ever met him. A 2003 investigation revealed only that Raleigh lived in Long Beach and La Habra, California, before his death in 1998. Beyond these sparse details, Raleigh remains an enigmatic figure in the fragmented narrative of Barbara's tragic final chapter. In her final days, Barbara reflected candidly on her life's regrets. She confided in her sister-in-law Jan about her estrangement from her son Johnny and the hollow pursuit of fame that had consumed her. She described her self-destruction as a way to externalize her inner anguish, vowing to stop drinking, though her body had already endured irreparable damage. On May 8, 1967, Barbara died at the age of 39, collapsing in her mother's arms after complaining of chest and stomach pain. Acute pulmonary congestion and liver failure, compounded by years of alcoholism, claimed her life. At her open casket viewing, the once radiant starlet was unrecognizable. Barbara's funeral was a quiet, somber affair, attended only by close family and a few friends. Hollywood was conspicuously absent. Even in death, indignities followed, as strangers attempted to steal a lock of her hair before being stopped by her brother. Her son returned from Vietnam to bid farewell, deeply shaken by the sight of his mother's ravaged appearance. Barbara's ashes were interred at Cypress View Cemetery in San Diego, marked by a plaque bearing her married name, Barbara Lee Raleigh, though none of her ex-husbands attended or acknowledged her passing. The weekend after Barbara's funeral, Frank and Jan Redfield visited her parents, Lee and Mabel, to check on them. As they approached the house, Jan noticed Lee placing a small box by the curb for the garbage. Inside were Barbara's final belongings, a pair of jeans, a sweatshirt, housecoats, her flip-flops, and the terry cloth dress she had died in. Lee later admitted he wanted to remove all physical reminders of Barbara from the house. While his decision broke Mabel's heart, Lee felt it was necessary. "They were just clothes," he said, "not memories." As the garbage truck took the box away, Lee sat on the patio, head bowed, stoically refusing to cry. "We don't cry over spilled milk," he always said. "We just mop it up." The pain of Barbara's decline reverberated through her family. Her parents, Lee and Mabel Redfield, were consumed by sorrow after her death. Mabel clung to Barbara's letters and photographs until her passing in 1971, while Lee succumbed to despair and alcoholism, dying less than a year later. Even in death, Barbara's exploitation persisted, with a supposed friend stealing cherished heirlooms from her grieving father. For John Lee, Barbara's memory was a blend of joy and sorrow, her laughter and vibrant spirit vivid reminders of her enduring impact on his life. Through his own strength and accomplishments, serving in Vietnam, earning advanced degrees, and building a stable, loving family, John honored the complex, flawed woman who deeply shaped him. Despite the chaos that consumed much of her life, Barbara's unwavering love for her son remains her most enduring legacy. John Lee Payton passed away on November 24, 2023. As for her father, who never openly expressed his feelings for her, one hopes that in whatever eternal space they now share, the fractures of their relationship have healed, and father and daughter have finally found the peace that eluded them in life. So what did you think about the tragic life and catastrophic downfall of Barbara Payton? And what are some other stories you'd like me to cover in the future? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment, as they always start an interesting conversation. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, keep seeking the stories that move your soul.